So, welcome to episode 16 of SDRs on Mars. I'm here with Eddy Bahnam, who is a sales rep at Posi-Slope. And Eddy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself today?
Sure. So I'm, like any other salesperson would say, a sales professional. I've been doing sales for nearly, I'd say, 15 years combined throughout my life. I've been with Posi-Slope now just over 5 years. I've also just opened my own, more or less called it a consulting company, and also kind of business strategy, sales strategy for 2 years now, called EB3. It really does focus on small, medium corporations, some large, but heavily focused around small and medium.
Okay, cool. That is definitely a difference in roles for sure.
Yeah, big time.
Some sales consulting. How do you like it so far?
To be frank, I love it. I mean, it sounds cliche, but when it comes to the sales aspect of things with Posi-Slope, the one thing that drove me to it is I was always one that enjoyed traveling for work. And, you always hear about those things. Are you doing really what you love? Are you in your dream job? Ever since I was a kid, I didn't really know what the actual title was going to be. But what I did know is that I wanted to travel for work. I knew I didn't want to stay in one specific spot. I wanted to be able to be mobile, meet with people, interact. I've always been a talker. I always, I know I kind of developed, I guess, a persuasive skill at a young age. And I was told by many people that, the old famous line, you could sell an ice cube to an Eskimo. And I really took that to heart. So I wanted to emphasize and really utilize that and hone in on something. And sales really just became, part of my life at a young age. So I kind of went with it and just ran.
What is the first thing you remember selling?
So I actually am going to put this in my LinkedIn profile. It was my first job. I was 11 years old and I was working for a catering company called Lawlickers here in Ottawa. And it was a friend of my dad's that got me the job. Now, the problem was I was supposed to be a dishwasher at the time. And I walked in, did my first set of dishes, and then immediately my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, we're actually short staffed. Can you go out there at the buffet?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I'm like 11 years old here wearing an apron. They threw me a shirt that said Lawlickers on it. And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." So I go out there. And funny enough, the one thing that the guy next to me was saying, he was a supervisor, is try to get them to buy the premium plate. And I'm just like, "What's a premium plate?" They're
Yeah.
like, "Well, you're at the buffet, but if you sell them on the premium, you upsell it, right? It's kind of like an informal wedding, more or less." So I ended up upselling the crap out of it. My boss comes to me and says, "Dude, who are you?" And I got a raise that first night.
Oh,
And I'm just,
nice.
I'm just like, what happened here? And I guess I don't remember the conversations per se, but I do remember one thing. There was a couple that came and they were passing their plates down, and I just said, and I remember, vaguely what I said at the time, but somewhere along the lines of, you know, if you could have this buffet, but if you choose to do so, you could have, let's say, the steak for only X amount of dollars more. And in reality, it would be more beneficial because you still get, let's say, the sides of the buffet, but for an additional amount, which is very finite to the original price you paid. And that was something along those lines. And that was like the first pitch I had ever done. And it worked phenomenally. And I guess I just carried that. And even till today, I still use some of these techniques. You can have this, just like any other salesperson. You can have this and have XYZ for this much more. But at the end of the day, now the formula has changed, right? Your unique value proposition has changed. It's just, you're still starting here and ending here, but what's in the middle is changing.
Cool. And so I just want to back up for a second and talk a little bit about, I guess, what you're doing and where you're doing it. So I know that you're sort of working on a couple different projects right now. So let's just start with like Posi-Slope
Yeah,
for the
absolutely.
start here. So yeah, where is Posi-Slope located?
So Posi originated in Mississauga. They actually just moved their offices. They've been around for nearly 40 years now. And we just moved our office to Vaughan. We are a national presence actually in Canada. We have, I think, 5 manufacturing plants, and we have 4 offices, sorry. So we have a manufacturing plant in Vancouver, in Calgary, in Peterborough, in Montreal, and Quebec. And we have 4 offices, one in Vancouver, Quebec, sorry, Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, and Mississauga, or Vaughan, sorry, now. So I'm myself responsible for taking control more or less between Thunder Bay all the way down to Belleville, excluding Toronto. So I have basically the entire province other than Toronto.
Okay. And is there a specific office or like team that you're coordinating with? Because it kind of sounds like you're doing a little bit of like field sales, I guess is probably what I
Yeah,
want to call it.
you call them that. So I more or less manage the entire territory other than one specific aspect. I don't do any of the estimating. So we sell kind of to back up a little bit to make the viewers understand what it is that we do. So at Posi, if you can imagine a flat roof, to be able to drive water inside of a drain location, or let's say a scupper or any area where you have to drive water away from that given roof, we create a pre-engineered system with insulation to drive that water off of those given roofs. So internally we have, engineers, architects. We also work with engineers and architects and consultants in that realm. So for myself, I deal with architects, consultants, general contractors, anybody within the industry or the construction realm that has to do anything with the building and development or anything surrounding, let's say, the roofing industry.
Perfect. Okay, cool. And so are you primarily coordinating with one office, or are you working with all of them across Canada? Well, I guess you're specifically focused on this territory, so that would probably go into the Vaughan office.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
So
perfect.
I coordinate with Vaughan, but I also have a little bit of the Gatineau and Hull territory, which is the Western Quebec. So I do coordinate sometimes with our Montreal office. It's seldom that it does happen, but we do run a lot of it from the Vaughan office. We've been fortunate enough to hire 3 bilingual people in our office now, whereas
Nice.
before there was only really one. So we're currently trying to grow our French presence even in the Ontario market, although we
Yep.
really do have a great presence in the Montreal and Quebec market currently.
Cool. And where are you working out of? Like, where am I speaking to you out of today?
So this is actually my house,
Yeah.
and I don't have a formal office, you could say. We are the sister company to Beacon Building Supplies, which is actually one of the Fortune 500 companies. And they have their office here in Ottawa. I do have you can almost call it a cubicle, but it's a small desk in a corner that I may use once every couple of months. But mainly, I call it what it is. My truck is really my office. I,
Okay.
I'm a road warrior. I like to be on the road. I can't see myself getting off, to be personally, to be frank. And it just kind of is what it is.
Cool. Okay. And then, so the other side of that is like, I know you're running this consultancy. So tell me a little bit about what that does and like where it operates.
So the one thing that I love to do, and this is how EB3 kind of came about, I had an individual that approached me once and had asked me a little bit of advice on the business side. And I did give some advice back. And it turns out that that individual used the advice and they yielded very great results. They came back to me a second time and they said, "Hey, Eddie, I just want to let you know in the last 4 or 5 months that you gave me this advice, our revenue went up 48%. I was baffled. I said, "You're joking." He's like, "No, man, I'm being 100% serious and I'd like to pay you for more." And I didn't say no. I
Yeah, for
said, "Yeah."
sure.
I mean, why would I? So at that point, I didn't have EB3. I just, like any other individual, I was running it off of an HST number. I opened an HST number and we started speaking. And they came back asking specific, very, very targeted questions. And they wanted to get an opinion first and then get suggestions after. That was the first time I ever had an individual ask me for an opinion before I had any suggestions. And it was new to me. And I've actually now started structuring it this way when I am dealing with any of our clients. So after I gave the opinion, I gave my suggestion. They took it, and then we started speaking about how we're going to use that long term. Because at the end of the day, as any consultant would know, you can give an answer, but it's better to, of course, try to stretch it out elaborately so that you can give step by step so that the person can follow almost like a system, right? You don't want to just give an answer, let them go, and then come back and then potentially fail because they didn't have every step in between. So when I did give the answer, I said we should consider maybe doing something long term and then having something set up weekly or bi-weekly so that we can use this system to your advantage. And at the same time, we can both learn from it. And that was the first client I ever had. And it lasted a year and it worked, again, phenomenally well. They consistently grew year over year. I think we stopped about a year ago. And I talked to them 3 weeks ago. And they said from the time we first spoke, before even the 48%, they're now at 132% revenue growth since the first time we spoke.
Wow. That's
So
pretty cool.
yeah, and to me that's unbelievable because my approach has always been to help. I just wanted to help at first. And that's what it's all about, right? We all go back to the why and the purpose. And for me, it was originated from the fact that I just wanted to help them.
And so this sales consulting, do you focus on specific industries, or like how do you do it?
So there isn't really an industry specifically. It's I try to keep it universal. It is tough because every industry is different. The one thing that I try to drive the clients away from is all the junk and cut through the noise that you see online today. The problem is you're going to be convoluted with all this information, all of these, 10 steps, 77 steps, and 5 steps online, to success, or 5 steps to revenue growth and whatnot. But the reality of the matter is this: the funnel, although it always will be the same, certain steps may change, right? And
Yep.
there's one thing that I am creating, which I'll be releasing in the near future, and I'm going to be calling it the EB3 funnel. And we all know the foundational one, which is just basically you start off at the top with your demand or lead gen, and then you go all the way through, try to get into your sales cycle, and then your follow through. So I try and break down, when I'm first speaking to any client, where they are and where they need to be. And there's always 3 specific questions, and that's always going to be: what do you want to see, when do you want to see it, and what have you done? This way, for myself as an individual, I know what it is that they really want, and I know what kind of timeline I have. But I also ask, what have you already done, so that it doesn't become redundant. I don't give them information they've already seen or they've already heard, and then it just becomes useless information.
Right. Okay, cool. And so as far as like, I guess the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is like your discovery process. And so you just elaborated on it a little bit there in terms of EB3. You want to understand basically, where they are in that process so far. Um, maybe we could touch on Posi-Slope discovery. Like, how do you know what clients are looking for in that setting?
Well, for us, because we sell a very particular product, we already know who's going to be coming to us, because there's only so many qualified contractors that can use our product. So usually we're going to be going after commercial roofing contractors or just general contractors that work with flat roofing companies. So it's very easy for us to find the clients that we need to go to.
Hmm.
I remember when I first started, I was told to really target flat roofing community. Now, if you go on Google, you're going to find a lot of them, but some of them you're not going to find. That's just because there's a lot of the subcontracting realm that works with the general contracting realm, and you have to kind of use your wits and your smarts to try and find out who's working with who. Sometimes you're not always going to be told, I'm working with this guy, because they're not trying to divulge that information. They want to keep it to themselves because
Yep.
they find it being leverage. So what you do is, you just integrate yourself within the community and you start talking to everybody. You go to some of these shows, you try to be part of these associations. When there's golf events, you attend to the golf events, you speak to everybody. Eventually, you're going to learn who's doing what and when. And that's kind of how our discovery process works.
Right. You just sort of mentioned something that I find interesting. You're talking about going to networking events and things. For a little while, there were like no networking events in person. I think they're
Yeah.
starting to come back a little bit now. Have you done any in-person events recently?
I've done one. We went to a golf tournament, actually. It's called the Roofers Memorial Golf Tournament that we had. We normally have it every year. I'm actually part of the committee, and we've had it for the first time, actually, 2 months ago. And it was just unbelievable to see everybody. And we had a record breaking number of players. We normally would have 180 people. We were actually overbooked. So we had people that were kind of sitting in and just waiting until the dinner. So it was unbelievable for us.
Wow.
And we also support the Heart and Stroke Foundation. And we had a record breaking year again, right, in donation. And for us, it was just good because we had been so long as a community apart that when we came together, the conversations were so, I guess, hyper focused and condensed, but so valuable, because you weren't trying to talk to somebody for half an hour. You were just trying to get 5 minutes of their time, but asking really hyper specific questions to get really, really like honed in answers,
Right.
because you knew that you may not have this opportunity again for a couple of months, if not a year, depending on when the next, let's say, event or meeting is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Like you need to make the most out of that time, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And so in both of these situations, actually, I don't know how much you would run into objections with your consulting, because it kind of sounds like maybe you're operating on more referral base right now, or
Yep.
yeah, okay. So then why don't we talk about objections more with like Posi-Slope, for example? Um, Yeah.
So for us, we're a I can explain this best in this way. If you look at basic strategy, if you define what strategy is, it's all about two things. It's about differentiation or low cost. You know, you for us as a company, we're in a low cost environment. We have two other players that compete against us, and it really comes down to a 33.3% chance of getting the job. The unfortunate part is we're always going to have somebody who's going to be lower because we are not the lowest in our market, and we don't try to be. We're a value based company,
Hmm.
but we do compete in a low cost market. Now, the objections are always going to be your competitors cheaper or lower than you are. So we always have to come back. Although even after 5 years, I still find myself selling on unique value proposition. What are some of the values that we have in comparison to our competitors? And even though you would think sometimes that some of our clients would be, well ingrained with the information, it still has to be quite repetitive
Hmm.
because it's to them it's not like muscle memory, right? They have to be reminded what happened in the past, how great of a support they had behind them working with Posi-Slope instead of working with our competitor, because it really comes down to one thing: you pay for what you get, right? And when you're working with the industry leader, you're going to get great service. Sometimes it might be a very good price, and you're going to get that quality, and that's what we pride ourselves on.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned repetitive too, because I mean, for you working Posi-Slope every day and going through this like value proposition, this is like information that is so in your face all the time.
Yeah,
But it's a new conversation to that person, right?
exactly. That's exactly it.
Cool.
Now, but mind you, for me when I first started, I remember when I think we were at God, if I can remember, we were started off. I had 31 clients in our roster, and this was back in 2016. Today, we're working with close to 89. So, because again, not every contractor can use our product, there's only so many of them that are qualified to do so.
Hmm.
When I came in, again, I was handed a laptop and a phone and said, good luck. There was no training, no orientation. I came in the absolute beginning of peak season. So I had to really hit the ground running and learn on my own. But the one thing that I learned, and if, the question will come up soon, if you are a good salesperson, and I will never be able to answer the question of, are you born a salesperson or not? For me, I'm not going to say I was born a good salesperson. I just developed a lot of great skills. But one thing I did really learn from that experience is when I was given that laptop and that phone is you just got to have that tenacity and you got to have passion for what you do. And it's not about the product or the service. It's about like the not the vision, but the position itself. If you're passionate about sales and you really do want to be the best at it, you're going to put full effort to maximize whatever it is that you're doing.
Hmm.
And I remember going into that, it was in July and our fiscal year end was September 30th. And they were like, man, we're never going to hit budget. Like we're 3 months away here and we've got like 300,000 left to book. And there's a new rep coming in. And I remember literally a couple of days after fiscal year end, we literally hit it at 102%. And everybody was baffled. They were perplexed of how the hell this happened. And I said, look, it's all about how much commitment we have here. And I said, we worked as a team. It was difficult for me. I was just meeting everybody, but it was all about commitment. I would call every day. Every single day, my office was getting annoyed of how often I would call them for information, for estimating information. But how else was I going to do it? I was remote. I was the only representative in Canada that was remote without an office. Every other rep had an office that was localized close to them for files or any information they needed. I was working off a phone and a laptop, and that was it. So again, it goes back to that commitment, having that tenacity, basically that
It,
grit. I call it grit, like every other person does.
it's interesting that you say that though, because like the more I get into it, and the more I learn about how to maybe hone a sales technique or an outreach campaign, or sort of bring that all together and close some deals and stuff, the more I realize like no one's actually born good at sales.
No, no, God, no. I've never met. I remember I met. So my mentor, when I first got into to real sales, and I wanted to learn, he told me like he used to be a goalie in hockey, and he used to be super shy. He was young, and he said when I got into hockey and I started meeting some of the guys, I became a little bit less shy and I became a little bit more extrovert than introvert. But that was because the team. It wasn't him. And after that day, I started kind of realizing something is you need to have a pretty great surrounding to be able to start feeling comfortable in something that you're doing. If you're not, and you're always going to have that kind of uncomfortable feeling, and you don't have a good support system behind you, you do feel like a lone wolf out there, and all the judgments, all the opinions, they start affecting you really on a personal level. I've been fortunate because I'm not a person that takes anything really personally, and you can go back to the never carry emotions from sale to sale. I'm pretty great at that. I have seen others that unfortunately have a different perspective,
It's a learned
but I've
skill.
coached one or two people on it, and I've told them, look, you have to understand, it's a game, right? It's a game at the end of the day, and if you want to look at it any other way, that's perfectly fine. But through my eyes, business as a whole is really just a game. It's like when you start any, like Mario, for crying out loud, right? You get up one level, you keep going up levels until it's game over. And game over can be one of two things: you quit or you get fired. And that's reality of life. You just got to take it for what it is. And just because, you fell into the water in Mario and you had to go back and get another life, you didn't cry about it. It's the same thing. You just got to keep moving forward. You got to push through. You got to keep climbing. Eventually, you got to go down, the gutter or whatever the green thing used to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So, right. That's all it really is. You got to just jump and grab that flag.
You also just mentioned something else that's really interesting. So at Posi-Slope, for example, you have this team, and so you can, talk about the commitment of the whole team and like a team effort to get this thing done. But in your consulting, you're like a solopreneur, so it's
100%.
a very different dynamic.
It's 100% different.
How do you stay motivated as a solopreneur?
YouTube. It's crazy to say that, but YouTube. For anybody that's in the sales game or anyone's trying to get into consulting, and I know you can probably vouch for me on this, motivational videos, sales seminar videos, sales videos, just, consulting videos, all that stuff really, really helps. For me, I like to wake up in the morning, and I saw that some of the questions soon is going to be something with coffee. What's my morning routine? And I kind of jump into it right now, but, I just actually stopped consuming caffeine. Funny enough.
Really?
Yeah. I'm already a person that's quite hyper.
Right. Okay.
I'm like almost 100% sure I've been ADHD since I was like, I was born ADHD for crying out loud. But one thing I did realize is when I do have coffee, it tends to shift, my mindset. I tend to think I'm already a person that I'd like to call it. I saw this on LinkedIn actually, diversified thinking.
Oh,
And
interesting.
Right. A gentleman that has ADHD called it diversified thinking. My mind is already racing all the time, and add coffee to that, it's just not a good mix. And
Yeah.
I've been drinking coffee for probably 3 years now. And about a week ago, I said, you know what, I'm going to cut it out. And it's been wonderful. I feel more calm. It's kind of that feeling of bliss. I'm more focused. I am not so agitated. So on top of that, I like to watch maybe a video every single morning. And sometimes it's even the same video. I'll watch something like Michael Pena or Gary Vaynerchuk or Simon Sinek, the usual guys, Grant Cardone sometimes. There's some things I'm in disagreement with that he says, but at the end of the day, he's very motivational, right? There's certain tactics that I can learn from these gentlemen and I could bring to the table, just like I would bring, let's say, from my estimating team at Posi. It's kind of the same thing. It's just that I don't have a direct link to those gentlemen or the madams that I listen to, but I have a direct link to my estimating team. It's just how you pretty much transfer the information and the knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. I would say similarly, that was a big hurdle for me as like a solopreneur. I was used to working with a team, and I was like, "You're doing it all." So
it's the worst, especially when you have to do, let's say, from your first email generation, right, all the way to payment, and you realize how many steps are in between. And I had a client actually ask me that once. He's like, Eddy, like, how many steps do you think I need to take to get from acquiring a client to, let's say, the final sell to performance, and then from there, the follow-up? I said, man, it could be 5 to like 100. It depends on how you structure it.
It also depends on the client, right?
Exactly. Depends on the client. Again, it's all about the structure. And, you have companies that are as simple as you work with something like MailChimp or GetResponse or MailerLite. They'll find your email address, or if they hop on the website, of course, they're going to fill out a pop-out form or just, a lead generation form. From that point, obviously, you're going to have your email automation. It goes out. You're going to have your if and then scenarios. And if you don't, it's just, trying to get you a booked call, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It could be starting off with something like that. And then from that point, once you do have the book call, you're going to have your discovery or your basic information call to try to understand what the pain points or what it is that are needed for your client. And then from there, it could be as fast as closing them right there and then, or it could be that you're going to set up another call or a demo, right? And then from that point, you can close them and then the work happens. Or it could be a lot more elaborate. You can have, again, your lead generation process in email, your call, and then you're going to have a handoff. And then from the handoff, there's going to be, more information, then another handoff for account executive, a demo. It could be lengthy. It depends on the client and the corporation. So, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, cool. And so I'll jump into that question actually right now then. As far as morning routine, it sounds like you've sort of started to do some things. The caffeine part is interesting. I've been on and off with caffeine for like all of my life.
Yeah.
Currently,
It's tough, man.
yeah, currently
It's tough.
I'm enjoying my morning coffee, but more than one,
Yeah.
I get really weird. So I totally connect with
You get
that
me.
piece.
Yeah, you get me. So my wife actually got me on caffeine after we met. For 2 years after we met, I never drank coffee. Then, unfortunately, she brought this pumpkin spice latte mix that she found. It was horrendous, man. I couldn't say no, and I had it, and I fell in love. Then it just started switching to like all these different things, like French vanilla and like almond something something, and hazelnut, and I just couldn't get enough. And every morning, I was just looking forward to having coffee. And then I
Right.
realized one day, I'm like, this is becoming too much. I'm having 2 coffees every morning, and already one was too much.
Yeah.
But it's because I like the taste. So a week ago, I just said, you know what, it's enough. So I changed the routine a little bit. Instead of coffee, I'm having caffeine-free tea, because really, it's just like smoking, right? They talk about how it's almost like habitual in the sense that it's a movement.
Yeah.
And I'm used to waking up and having something in my hand, reading through the news while the kids are eating, and that way I get caught up on what's happening in the world. By the way, sorry if you hear my baby's supposed to be sleeping, but he's up a little bit, so there might be some background noise. But
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, this is what working from home is.
yeah, basically, like I said, I took the afternoon off. I thought it'd be a great call for us to have.
Yeah, no, I
So
love it.
getting back into it, have the tea, going through the news, and once that's done, of course, watch a little bit of the motivational videos. My wife gets to drop off the kids in the morning. Watch a little bit of motivational video. When I have a chance, I actually go on the treadmill for about 15, 20 minutes, and I have the laptop there at the same time just to start on emails. Sometimes I'll wake up. Sometimes I'll do that earlier. If I wake up, let's say around 5 o'clock in the morning, I'll start with the emails first, get that out of the way, because really that's one thing everybody just suffers from is I got to get going with my clients. I want to make sure that I'm on point, or I'm on time, and I'm not behind, and they don't think that I'm lagging. Or usually it's like that, either right before or right after. Let's say when I have the tea.
Right. Okay, cool. So actually, my sister got me this face scrub that smells like coffee. And if you're trying
Jesus.
to replace the coffee, I highly recommend it. It's a really good one in the morning.
You got to send me a link. You have to send me a link, because the smell of coffee kills me. When she's making hers and I'm not having one, I'm just like dying inside.
Yeah. This one changed my mind. I probably wouldn't have ever bought it for myself, but I have now gone and repurchased this face scrub. It's really good.
All it takes is just this one person. And just like I said, my wife started me on coffee. I would have never drank coffee if it wasn't for her.
Yeah.
But it's when you first smell it and you got that pumpkin spice smell, you're like, ooh, that sounds interesting. And you take that first sip, you're like, oh, wait a second, that's not as bitter. Then you realize their selling point is just, it's too good. It's just like you can't say no.
Yeah,
So and
exactly.
it's funny I say that, because I actually coached a company into something similar to this. I said, you got to make your product or service so good that the company, or let's say the B2B or B2C, whatever maybe you're doing, it's got to be so good they just can't say no, right?
Yeah.
That value proposition has to be gold, so that when you present it, they just feel like they'd be stupid to say no, or stupid to walk away from it.
Yeah,
And that's
for
basically what coffee did to me. It was too good of a sell, and I just couldn't say no.
Coffee.
Yeah, I might
Cool.
go back to it. We'll see. I'm going to give it a month, and if I can do without completely, then I'm out.
Yeah. After a month, like you're ingrained. Whatever's going on, you can just keep it going.
Exactly. They say you need 21 days, so I'm going to work on that 21 days.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'm excited to see how that goes for you.
I'll give you updates. Don't worry. If I crack, you'll see me with a picture on LinkedIn with coffee, and it'll just have like a little caption saying, I just couldn't do it with a tear.
So we kind of talked about this previously, just before starting this call. You mentioned, some early experiences that you have with sales, but what do you think drew you into sales? Like, why do you like it?
I wish I can sum it up into one word. If it was anything close to one word, it'd be interaction. The one thing I love to do, and it's just been, people to people. And we see it more and more these days when you see the B2B or B2C, and now it's starting to become like H to H, human to human. And I like that we're moving in that direction. I really do. I've always been one that believes that before anything, we were human, right? Before titles, we were human.
Yep.
And when I was growing up, I moved a lot. And I mean a lot. I remember, if I can count correctly, ever since we bought this house, this was my 17th move in my life.
Holy jeez.
And yeah, it's been pretty terrible. So, but also greatness came out of it. And what I learned, and actually it was my mentor who showed me this. He said, one of the things that you had to do every time that you moved is adapt to a new environment. And to me, I didn't look at it like that. I just looked at it as it was so tough because I could never hold friends. Like I was always moving because my dad was renting a lot. So we were moving schools all the time and, jobs here and there. But it made sense because every time we moved, I had a new set of friends and I had to basically build this persona.
And so when you're considering working with different clients, how do you know which clients are going to be a fit for your approach?
For EB3 or for Posi?
I guess for EB3, yeah. How do you know which companies you want to consult with or work with in EB3?
So I've actually refused 2 clients before in EB3 because what they were only looking after was money. And to me, money is not always the best end result. When I first asked them the 3 questions, they gave me pretty viable answers. But then when I started getting into it in our second meeting, on both of them, it actually happened right at the second meeting because that's when we delve a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
I had asked, okay, so now I know where you want to be from what you told me. So this is going to be the first step. And then they always bring up money. And I remember one of the clients, and I have an NDA with everybody, so I can't really say who they are, but this one client was a little bit larger. Yeah, I know, that's what I said. So the first client had said something, well, Eddie, we want to just make more money. That's really the approach here. We just want to make more money. I said, look, money isn't everything. Money comes with the effort that we're going to be putting in. Well, we get the effort part, but we're hiring you here because we want to make the big bucks. And I said, look, I think that we have a mix-up. I came here because I'm trying to bring value on every level, not just specifically monetarily. And we had an argument, and I walked away, and I said, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to help you. And I actually walked away. I even told him, don't worry about the first meeting. It's on me because unfortunately, I don't think this is going to jive, and it's not going to be a good match. And It was something along the same lines for the second client, just different conversation, but more or less the same thing. The match for me is about bringing value to others because we're here, and you hear kind of the old line is, I'm in business to do business, right? But also at the end of the day, you have to understand what your purpose is in your business. And one of the greatest people who have mentioned this is Simon Sinek, to find out your why. And if your purpose is to solely make money, you're not going to make the kind of money that you want. You're not going to scale the way that you want. Mm-hmm. But if your purpose is to help others with a product or service that you have, you're always going to succeed because you're going to eventually translate that purpose and make it your mission, right? And then along that, the people that you work with, that you employ, are going to understand what that mission is, and it's going to be ingrained in them. And the company's overall vision will be to ensure the satisfaction of the end user. And that's the kind of companies I like to work with, those who are aligned with what I'm trying to do, and that's to help others.
Wow, that's good. I mean, it definitely sounds like to get that kind of insight or knowledge of how a client fits, you need to really kind of back up and decide why you're doing something, right?
Yeah, it really does come down to that. It just sucks that, and usually you're going to see it more on the larger corporations than the small to medium. Small to medium are always going to have the tendency to grow by being able to give as much value back to their clients, because they're still kind of in that startup phase, right? Their mentality is, I want to make all my customers happy because I want either repeat business or new business or referral. That's their whole objective. Larger corporations have this mentality of, we already have an established brand or we already have an established clientele. Now we just want to make more money, right? How do we make more money? But what you have to understand is you got to go back to the fundamentals. What were you doing first to get to here? And if what you did before worked, why are you driving or deviating away from it? You're not supposed to deviate. What you're supposed to do is evolve it. If originally, and I can give you a good example, think about, let's say, someone who manufactures, who knows, chocolate bars, right? Initially, you wanted to satisfy the hunger of your end user, right? Maybe they had a craving and they wanted to eat chocolate. So your intention was you're trying to satisfy their hunger. Now, if eventually with time, as you grow and you go to a certain scale, you decide, okay, now we have a brand, people know us, we're not the Mars or the Snickers of the world, but we have a name. Now we just want to make more money, we want to make more margin. And you just say, I want to bring somebody in, and that person is going to tell us, this is what we need to do. We need to have aggressive sales tactics, and we're just going to make more money. No, not necessarily. What it really boils down to is when you first started, what was your approach with your clients? You were making sure that your name was out there in the sense that you're really trying to satisfy that hunger. So let's take that initial, let's say the initial phrase or on onset, what you were doing, and just evolve it. You can maybe change the wording, or you can use a different marketing approach or marketing tactic, but stick with what worked before, but evolve it. Because in strategy, they have this thing that, like, some strategists will say, we hate the phrase, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, if it ain't broken, it doesn't mean you can't evolve it.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
it comes down to.
There's a
If it
difference
ain't broken,
between
just
fixing and
exactly.
changing and iterating, right?
Exactly. That's what change is all about. We fear it, but once we do it and we see the results, we're all baffled by it. So that's my approach towards that.
Yeah, I like it. Cool. And so we kind of just briefly mentioned this, but I do want to sort of dig into this a little bit. How do you sort of, like after your sales grind, whatever that is, because it doesn't necessarily stay confined to 9 to 5, how do you make sure you are taking time to, get out of that for a minute?
So I have a pretty strict routine. I've been doing it for close to 3 years now. I've suggested it to a lot of salespeople, and a lot of them have actually used it. So I wake up early in the morning. I try to get as much done as I can before the kids wake up. Then you grind until about 12:01. And then what you do is you're supposed to settle back a little bit. Because at the end of the day, we're human. After lunchtime, people tend to, kind of get a little bit more relaxed. You see less emails going out, less phone calls. It's a little bit more relaxed at that time. You use that time for a little bit more administrative work, right? Some of the calls that you're going to be putting in. Yes, my love. Some of the administrative stuff, you're logging your calls for your Salesforce, your HubSpots, whatever it is that you're using as a CRM. Closer towards the end of the day, you're going to make some of the most crucial phone calls that you have for the next day. So if you're trying to, let's say, close a bigger deal or just a deal in general, and you want to be top of mind, you want to call somebody, let's say around the 3:30 mark, just give them a little bit of a heads up, like, hey, I want to know if we're still on track for et cetera, et cetera. And if not, let's see how we can maybe reach out first thing in the morning, close out a couple of things. That way, by that time, that client has you at top of mind going into his evening. And in the morning, they're still refreshed about what you spoke about. Then, if you have any more work, what I normally do for myself, I come back, we take care of the kids, family time for 3-4 hours. When everybody goes to bed, hop back on the laptop or the computers downstairs. A little bit more administrative work, a little bit of LinkedIn work, a little bit of outreach to some of the clients I work with, see how everybody's making out, making sure I'm getting feedback. I use a lot of the nighttime stuff for feedback loop because I want to make sure what I'm doing is right. And if I'm not, how can I be better at doing it? And usually when they first wake up in the morning, they'll see something and they'll reply to me because they have a chance to. So it kind of really works well, and the cycle works really well for me.
Right. I like that. Cool. Awesome. I think that was probably a bunch of what I wanted to go through today. So thank you so much for jumping on the show today, Eddy. I guess I can leave you like, what's next? What happens next with EB3?
So one of the things that I'm going to be doing, and somebody approached me today about it, they're a SaaS company that would like to have someone that's SaaS inclined, such as myself, potentially consult their clients about how to, let's say, integrate their business with the software that they're trying to sell with other softwares that are out there in the market.
Right.
So
okay.
to reiterate that more simply, the company that wants to hire me has a very, very specific piece of software that can be used with a multitude of other softwares out there. The problem is this company doesn't have anybody that understands the outside market. that understand, say, every other SaaS product. So they've reached out to me saying, would you be interested in potentially talking to some of our clients to see how you can make them, I guess, understand what the possibilities are or how they can maximize their outreach with our software in conjunction with these other softwares that are out there. I said, I'd love that. I'd love to get a demo. I'd love to see how you do it from your perspective,
Yeah.
learn from it, and then start being able to translate that or transfer that information to your clients. So that's something that I was just talked about. And I think that's a pretty interesting approach. I mean, I think it's not being done much, if at all. So that for me is going to be probably the next thing.
Yeah, cool. I definitely noticed, EV consulting when I was reading about it. You definitely talk about the SaaS space a little bit, and so for me, I'm typically operating in the SaaS space, so that was a big connection for me, I think. But I mean, I came out of a lot of industrial sort of stuff, so that there was a lot of similarity that I thought we could build on today, which is awesome.
Well, if you ever need any help on the SaaS side, again, that's a huge affinity for me. Being able to create that proper tech stack is everything. And you mentioned it before we really got into the meeting. It's really, really crucial to have the right tech stack. Mm-hmm. And for clients out there, or for anybody that's going to be listening to this, just know that perception is everything. Although you may search CRM and the first thing that comes up is going to be Salesforce, or Salesforce or HubSpot or some of the really big guys like Freshworks, for example, do not automatically think that those are going to be the best options for you. They really are not always the best options. When I first started in EB3, I was already using Salesforce in the company for Posi, and I thought, it's a great tool already, but it's such an enterprise level tool that it would never work on my level for consulting. So I had to take the time to explore other avenues and explore other softwares, and it really boiled back down to using something that was half the cost. But again, it was much more efficient for what I was trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
My tech stack ended up shrinking. And instead of me thinking I need 7 or 8 different pieces of software, I was able to shrink it down to really just 4. And I could literally run my entire business on 4 pieces of software instead of 7 or 8, like most other businesses think they have to. Mm-hmm. So that's what, again, if you ever do need any help, let me know. I'm here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting today. And it's Ella, right?
Yeah, it's Ella. Yeah.
Okay. Well, have a good one, Ella. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon. And that's pretty much it. So have a good weekend,
Thank you so much. You too. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time.
Take care. Bye.